well, let's show you a real bit of America. And I think they give him $100 bill, right?
So they don't, it doesn't show them giving him $100 bill.
But it
And which
has to
is
be.
no, it's not, it doesn't. It's not, because what's crazy is that when he meets the blind singer that he knew back then in the tunnel, and then he gives him the $100 bill, the kid smells it. Oh shit, you're right, because then how did he get it? Oh fuck, yeah, you're right, it has to be.
You got there. You got there.
I got there.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched. I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and it's that beautiful time of year again where we get to revisit movies that David and I have already seen. But you know what? We just feel like talking about them. Welcome to December.
Did you mention Slumdog Millionaire in that whole thing?
It's
And today
Slumdog. It's today we chose to finally watch again, Slumdog Millionaire. You know what's really funny, David, is that when you were starting the intro, I totally expected you to go full Indian accent.
I'm not doing that at all. Not doing that at all. Um, I remember the exact seat in the movie theater I sat when I watched this movie. It was like the theater that I used to go to near me. It actually, like, a lot of theaters you don't want to sit in like the front row or the front section because it's too close.
Yeah.
This one was actually designed in a way where the front seats were actually a little bit far back. So, and they were the only ones that bent.
Oh.
So you actually kind of laid back a little bit. So a lot of people, when I would take them to this theater, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was like, "Just trust me." And then when you get up there, it's actually like, it was pretty sweet and no one ever sat there. Um, I went into this movie. I don't even remember why. I think I was just at that point trying to see all the movies that people were like, this is potential Oscar movies. And did I love this? Like the first time I saw it, I was just talking with Garrett earlier. I was like, "Oh, I'm watching this." He's like, "Does it hold up?" Hell yeah, it holds up.
Yeah.
Um, like I like the conceit, the structure of it. I like that they don't rely too much on the "Who Wants to Be a Millionaire" aspect. It sort of fades off as the movie goes along.
You say that, but like the opening is like A, he cheated. B, da da da. C, and D, it is written. And I was like, that's a little cheesy.
No, I agree. And if you actually look at I've never looked at the poster before. I like the poster, but then if you like read it, it's like super super cheesy. Where it's like, what does it take to find a lost love? Smarts, destiny. And I was like, all right, well, that's maybe we could have done a little better on that. I but overall, like, I love this movie. I just think it's like so well done. It's pretty compact too. It's a 2 hour long movie, but like
Yeah.
it flies.
It
Um,
flies, but it also feels like it lasts a lifetime. But not in a bad way. Like you're watching these kids grow up, and it feels like you've been watching them for years. But like you said, the whole film is too. So it's not only do we have the entire backstory, but it's interlaced with the present time in like one of the best ways ever. And then on top of that, like a third layer is that love story that goes alongside it. So it feels like you're just living your entire life alongside theirs, and then it's only a 2 hour movie.
yeah. Um, I the love story is pretty one sided for most of the movie. You're like, well, we just get to the end, and she's like, I've always liked Salim.
It doesn't make any sense either, because from the get-go he was always the one, like Salim was always the one, like, you cannot be in our little crate in the rain, like stay out of there. And then Jamal was always the one who's like, come in here, follow us, we'll protect you, we'll keep you safe, like every step of the way.
Well, yeah, that's why they ended up together. My scenario was a joke. Um,
No, but it's kind of right because she was always like not very like she didn't show that she particularly liked him in any specific way.
I think she was actually just more of a realist because her life was a lot tougher than theirs for most of it. Like
Yeah.
they had these scenarios where things got really bad for them, but Salim got them out of it pretty quick. They sort of had a free life a little bit, after they got away from Maman, Maman, whatever his fucking name is.
Maman, yeah.
Um, and so she's just dealt with a lot. There's a lot of like implied, like she was assaulted a lot growing up. Um,
As
so I
when
think,
she was Cherry, right?
yeah. Well, at that point, I mean, I think the first time is probably Salim. In the scene in the hotel is the first time
Oh
something,
yeah, you're right. You're
because
right.
Maman even says before that she was a virgin, so no one had done anything to her up until that point. Um, so I don't. I mean, like the number one example to me of that is as soon as Salim shoots Maman, which is a very funny scene the way he does it. He's like, "Maman never forgets." He's like, "Maman can make an exception." He's like, "I can't take a chance, Maman," and like shoots him with the pillow.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my Who Wants to Be a Millionaire later. So,
Okay.
um, the shot happens and Jamal freezes. And
Yeah.
Latika does not even hesitate to start grabbing the money, grabbing all of her stuff, and getting out of there, right? Like
Right.
like this world is like what she's had to deal with. And so um yeah, I mean they're just in two different trajectories. And like as bad as Salim has been to him, he's also sort of protected him quite a bit.
It is quite weird. Salim is like a very complex character because he has this love for his brother that ultimately gets like the jealousy he has for his brother ultimately gets the best of him. And so you're always like, Salim is such a jerk. He's such a bad guy. But then he'll do these things that I'm not going to say like totally exonerates him, but like it pushes him to like more of a complex character instead of like a just a complete asshole.
Right. No, I agree. The other thing about this movie is, and I think people there's like controversy surrounding this movie that I was like looking into, but a little bit of blowback from this movie. Different podcasts I listen to talking about this are just like, oh, it was kind of a weak year, and like, oh, so this movie was nominated for 10 Oscars,
I and won like 9 of them.
won 8, and the
8.
only reason it didn't win 9 is because two of them were going up against each other. Best song was both I guess Jai Ho, yeah, obviously, right, and then the MIA song, um, or it's not that one, it's Osaya.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
which I remember. Oh, yeah, that's actually a good one too. Like I remember it now. Um, Ashley told me that I can't watch this movie anymore because I just like keep saying Jai Ho randomly, like throughout the house. I just sing it to myself.
Jai ho.
So like it had two nominated against each other. Otherwise, it only lost once. It lost Best Sound Editing, but it won Best Picture, Best Directing, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best
Best editing,
Cinematography,
best
Best
song,
Editing,
best
Best
soundtrack.
Score, Best Song,
Yeah.
Best Sound Mixing. It's crazy. The only thing
It's
it did.
insane. It's insane because you would think someone who won best editing, best score, best song and couldn't even win best sound editing.
Well, I think that, I mean, because the way I think that works too is like the sound group in the academy, I think probably sort of like split on it. They were just like, all right, we'll give you one. We're not going to give you both. And now it's only one category, so it would have just won it. But yeah, it's like how huge this movie was, and it said, does it hold up? I will say one thing. So this is, I guess, one of the first movies to win an Academy Award that was like shot mostly digitally. Like
Mm,
a lot of it was shot digitally, and it definitely needs right now like a 4K restoration. I feel like because I put in my Blu-ray the other day, and I was like,
yeah.
this does not look good. And it's like part of it's the
It doesn't look
stylistic.
it doesn't look bad because like you're about to say, part of it's the stylistic editing that it kind of presented itself with. But
Well, I
then
switched. I switched to a stream, and the streaming looked better.
I watched it on stream. I
And
liked it
yeah,
on stream.
it looked better. So it's, maybe it's just like streaming in 4K or whatever. I don't know. Um, but I think we can just get into it.
Possibly. I
What
think we can actually go through it like the beginning pretty fast.
Well, one thing I like that the beginning does is there's just all these images, and it's got like the money being fanned into the bathtub. It
Yeah.
has that famous like Frida Pinto, like her at the bottom of the train station kind of looking up at him.
Yeah.
Um and it's got like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire like coming in, and then it's got him being tortured, right? And it's like all of these images, and you're like, what is, if you walked into this blind, which I kind of did, you're like, what is going on right now?
I showed this to Taylor. She didn't really know anything about it, and it's funny because I've always made that there's a The Office episode where they go to like a summer camp,
Okay.
and Michael Scott pairs up with his actual wife. Forget her character name,
Oh,
but
right, right.
they do this like they have to come up with a 30-second play. They have to come up with a 30-second play, and they decided to redo Slumdog Millionaire in 30 seconds. And I
Oh,
remember
man.
watching this episode and thinking it's the funniest thing, and then looking over at Taylor, and she's just like, "I've never seen it. I don't get it." And I was like, "Oh man."
What Taylor think?
Oh, she loved it. I mean, I began crying in the first like 10 minutes of it because I know what's going to happen ultimately, and I was like, "Damn it." But she just like, yeah, she she liked it a lot.
It's funny. I was thinking about this too. I honestly think I might like Lion a little better now.
Interesting. I mean, they're very different.
But are they though? Like they are different, but in the
I don't
so
remember a allegory for who wants to be a millionaire in Lion.
well, no, but the like it starts out as he's a very young kid. He almost gets trafficked. The relationship with his brother, trying to find his mother, and he was trying to find Salim and Latika. Like there are very similarities, other than it just being like an Indian movie starring Dev Patel. Like I do think there's like a lot, and so. But the other thing too is like the emotion of it. Like I was flying back on a plane, and I don't like to watch new movies on a plane, so I put Lion on, and I'm sitting next to this like 250-pound pilot as I'm just bawling my eyes out watching the end of Lion. So I mean, I love both of them.
I think where Lion really hits you hard is the fact that it's a true story and that most of the story is 100% accurate. And then at the end, where it shows you spoilers for Lion, but where it shows you the actual like
Hmm.
recordings of him finding his mom and everything, hits you deep, right? But Who Wants to Be a Millionaire isn't based on a true story. It's
No,
just
right.
it's this like fun fiction thing that could happen, but didn't. So
It was also mind-boggling to me. So this movie was rated R, um,
for the
and they
implied sexual assault.
I think because of very like dark themes, right? And yeah, like you just said, and they didn't really have time or the money to try and contest that because they didn't realize this was going to be like the global phenomenon that it was. Um, so, but I like this should be a PG-13 movie. There's like nothing in this to me.
No,
There's
100%.
first of all, there's the one F word.
I don't
They
even
never.
remember where it is.
It's my fucking show.
Oh, yeah.
And he fucking really eats it up with that. Um, they never show the implied assault that happens to her, right? They never get anywhere near that. When people are killed, they don't really show any blood. So it's like the fact that this was rated R was complete bullshit to me. And like to the point of like when it said, "Oh, this is rated R," I was like, "Really?"
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention, but yeah, no, it shouldn't have been.
So the other thing is, so it kind of starts out basically with him being tortured, and what was really like kind of interesting to me in that opening is I like really like not the fatter cop that's torturing him, but the other cop. I'm like towards the end, you're like I kind of like this guy,
Yeah,
and it
I thought he
starts out.
was. I thought he was gonna play like a bigger part in the end. Like I thought he was like, "Wow, I heard your emotional story about Latika. I'm gonna go find Latika for you." Like I always think that he's playing a bigger role in the end.
Well, instead, he's like, "I could never find her. That's why I went on the show." And the cop just walks out. He's like, "I
Yeah,
don't
he's like,
fucking care."
and he also says, "I believe you." He's like, "Why now?" He's like, "Because you're too truthful to be a liar." And I was
Right.
like, "Oh, yeah,
But it just the fact that he, like, his first bit in the movie, he's like, "Bring out the electricity." He's like, "You've been working this guy all night, and, we haven't done anything." And then 2, he's like, they electrocute him for what feels like half a second, but it completely, like, knocks him out. And then the other fat cop, this is sort of like it is a cold open because the fat cop's like, what if he's telling the truth? And he's like, and the guy's like, what would a slumdog know? And he's like, the answers. I knew the answers. And I think part of the conceit of this movie that's pretty interesting is that he's not very bright, right? Like he doesn't know a lot. He just happens to know these answers. It's almost like coincidental. And on the
well, that's
ones he
the whole
doesn't, he gets a little lucky, like that and the way it ties into the story, obviously. Yeah, that's the whole point of
yeah."
the movie.
That's the whole point of the movie, and not only that, it's like the whole thing was like it is written, it is destiny, and so like everything had to line up perfectly for him to be where he is, and like we said, the point of the movie. Um, I think is the cop and the host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire are probably two at that time of India's most famous stars.
I mean, they're definitely two big ones, right? And like they both also went on to have like I've seen them in other like American movies. So Anil Kapoor was in the fourth Mission Impossible
Yep.
where he gets hit on by I forget what her name is. And then Irfan Khan, I'm probably saying his first name wrong. He was in Jurassic World, and then I think he
Yep.
actually just Jurassic World, Life of Pi, and then I think he actually passed away recently too, which is quite sad. So
Oh, that is sad. That is
I think it
sad.
was I think it was like during COVID. I'm not sure.
Oh
Um,
damn.
so I like the opening too. Like after that, after the cold open, the song that plays as they're kind of being chased by the cops, and then they run to their mom. And what's funny is there's this little Easter egg you don't realize until later when they bring up the Musketeers, and you find out later
Yeah.
like they never learned the third one. Um, but then the next scene,
It's so
where
funny
they're
at the end when that question is posed, Taylor turns to me. Like before anything, Taylor turns to me and she goes, "Oh, they never learned
nothing past her.
it." Nah.
Well, I think also is fairly obvious from the context. Every time though, I'm like, maybe it's D'Artagnan, but I think he's like the fourth guy that
He's
like
the
comes
fourth
in.
guy.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
the fourth guy. And so when he says A Aramis, Taylor, who thought it was D'Artagnan, was like, "Oh, he got it wrong. What a shitty." She was already mad. She was like, "What a shitty way to end the movie." Like, damn it. And then it was revealed that he got it right, and she was like, "What the fuck?" And then I had to tell her then, but
She immediately starts Googling. She's like, that's not correct.
no. But I think that's posed to. It's not going to be the Cardinal Reginald guy. Like that's obviously
Yeah.
he's the bad guy. But D'Artagnan is probably there to be like the trick question, the trick answer.
Well, in a lot of these too, like the question about like what's written underneath the like on the Indian flag, and it's like something will prevail. It's like truth, cheating, money.
Money, yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. Let me ask the audience. So the next scene is where they run like the shit houses. And I love like the little
Yeah.
like he's like, hey, get out, we have a customer. He's like, it's a shy one, brother. And then there's no time limit on a crap. And then him jumping into the shit like to go get the autograph.
Ugh. Mm.
Apparently it was chocolate and peanut butter, but it looked like the
It
most
looked disgusting.
disgusting thing ever. Like, and you can see like I really honed in on as he's running through the crowd, the little shit streaks that, like get
That
on
he's
people's
leaving
clothes.
on everyone. Yeah. I love how like it's so smart too. Like none of the bodyguards of the guy are touching him because he's covered in shit. So they just let him run right up to the guy covered in shit.
Yeah, and I guess that is obviously a super famous Indian movie star.
What's funny now is like we get to the first bit of where Salim is kind of like it's interesting because while they're running away from the cops, you don't really get like their brothers until they both run into their mother's arms, right?
Right.
And then when he closes him up in the outhouse, that's like your first little bit of, oh, he little scamp towards his brother. Where you get like the whole crux of the movie about Salim's deal with like their relationship is when he sells the autograph picture for like 40 rupees.
Right. No, and that's yeah, that is where like the first sign of him kind of being a well, locking him in the outhouse too, right?
Yeah, but that was a reason and a cause. That was the cause and the reason, right? It was because it was like he took too long that he cost him a customer. But selling the thing was just a dick move, and I think it was partially because it shows Salim as Jamal is getting the autograph. It shows him like kind of jealous of him. So it's like that jealousy versus consequence because of that. And that's like their whole relationship throughout the rest of the movie.
They go back to the cop station. He's like, "So how'd you know the answer?" And he's like, "Everyone knows who that is." And the fat cop's like, "I knew who it was." And he said, "See, everyone knows who it is."
No, he said it doesn't take a
Genius.
genius. It doesn't take a genius to know who that is. Yeah.
And then I think he asks him another question. Oh, the truth alone prevails thing. He's like, "How did you not know that? My 5-year-old knows that." And he's like, "Do you know who stole the constable's bike?" And he's like, "No, you know who did that?" And he's like, "Even 5-year-olds know who did that." Like, just
Yeah.
like I know what I know, basically.
Yeah.
Um, so the next part, and this has actually always confused me, and I guess I just figured out. So I always thought that Jamal and his brother were Hindus that were killed by like the Muslim people attacking, but I actually think I guess it was the opposite
I
because
think so.
and it makes sense too because Salim in the end was praying like he had a his mat out that he put out and was praying at the end of the movie, which I guess was to show him becoming more religious. I thought he had actually like changed, but it now makes sense too because he says because I if I didn't know about Ra holding the bow in his hand, which he didn't know because he didn't grow up with that, if I didn't know about that, then my mother would still be alive. Um,
Yep.
that's like that scene is like fucking crazy, and it's like imagining like 4 or 5 year olds going through that, and then like the way their mom just dies. Like you're almost like, man, she could have just hidden in the water, maybe. Like the crowd runs by.
I think she was just so busy trying to worry about her kids
Hmm.
that she didn't even see it coming. It's funny because when she gets hit in the head, she dies by drowning, presumably. I always like in that moment, I was like, man, I remember her dying in a much more gruesome way. And the reason I think that is because in all the flashbacks that Jamal has about his mother dying, she's burning alive.
I think there's a guy burning alive. I think that's the flashback, but like,
No,
but he's imagining his mom
he's
dying that way.
imagining his mom dying that way, or it's like some sort of like accumulation of a dream he's having. But that's why, because it always shows her dying in that way in all the flashbacks. But that's not the way she actually dies, which is kind of cool because when you're a little kid, you always like um, hype things up in your head, like you make them extreme. So it's kind of showing how he imagined his mom dying.
No, yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, because it's like the traumatic inciting event of the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But it's also like, interestingly enough, it's also how he met Latika, right?
It's how he met Latika, and it's also how he has this hatred. And I don't think this is like a point of the movie he's trying to make, but how much the cops fucking suck in India.
Like, yeah, there's a fucking religious war happening outside the truck, and they're like, "Go away."
Yeah, they're like playing cards, and there's a literal man on fire, and they're like, not my problem. And then for those same motherfuckers to be like interrogating him, he just has a bad taste in his mouth about cops. So it makes sense why he's like, he's totally disrespectful to them and everything.
Right. So we also have this is where Salim says, "Oh, she can't come in," but then Salim sort of pretends to be asleep, and Latika comes in the crate that they're in. Um, and then when it flashes back to the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Prem tells him you should quit now. You're not going to get the next one. And it's kind of interesting. His whole like, I don't want anyone to be more famous than me. I don't want anyone to win this because they'll become more famous than me or whatever. But it's also like, it also raises the notoriety of your show. Like, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? They didn't want everyone to win the million, but you do want someone to win you want people to start winning the million. Although, it's funny is like, there's this, LeBron James had this like game show where it was like people answering questions and like you could win like millions of dollars actually on it, there were ways that it like brought you back down. But it's like the cost of these shows are so cheap that it's like
Yeah.
if you did have someone win $1 million an episode, you're still making like if it's a popular show, you're still making a shit ton of money off of these.
So I take it that the Indian Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is probably produced by the same people who does the American Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's kind of like how we have like the X Factor, but they have X Factor India, X Factor Germany, The Voice,
UK.
UK, whatever. So it's the same amount of money that's being poured into these shows as like an American show, right? But
Yep.
since it's in a different country, it probably could even get it done a lot cheaper. Would you like to know, because at the end he wins 20 million rupees, would you like to know the conversion on how many US dollars that is?
So I looked it up and like we don't know the year that this happened, but
No,
I
we
did
do.
look.
It's 2006.
Is that what it says?
It
Okay.
says that, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't look up what that year. I think at this time it's around 280 to 240, 240 to 280, $240,000.
Oh,
What would you have?
30K.
Well, but the the other issue with that too, because you're like, oh, that's not really that much. But the other thing you have to think about is purchasing power.
No, purchasing power in India, sure, but it's sad when you think about that. It's like they're only like trying to win $30,000.
No, but yeah, but it also like in India, $30,000, you have to look at the purchasing power of it. So it's like
No,
if you
I
can buy
understand.
if you can buy a house for 500, I'm not saying what these are the numbers. If you can buy a house for $500, then you are basically a millionaire. So it just depends on what the costs to live are.
I understand that, but I was going back to what your point is the amount to produce these shows is that even if they won, if it's an American company that's making these shows in India, even if 5 people won the 20 million in a row, that's still only $100,000. That's nothing for the American company, you know?
Right? No, I get it. By the way, so the guy whose autograph he gets in the beginning, it wasn't the real guy, but that guy was like the guy he was playing was the original host of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in India. And then Anil Kapoor, who plays the host, actually was on the show, I assume, in like a celebrity capacity and won 5 million rupees.
Oh, that's funny.
So it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I imagine the amount of 20 million rupees is like to make you basically the equivalent of a millionaire there. Like, I think that's the point, obviously.
I mean, you're still a millionaire. You're still winning some amount of million rupees.
I know, but they could just make it one and it just wouldn't feel the same. So I think they chose the number 20 for a reason, I would assume. I didn't look that much into it.
I think you're right.
So the next scene is like when we get sort of one of the longer explanations of like the explanations of how he knows things get longer and longer, right? So the next one is this song by a famous blind poet, which apparently that was like fake. It was actually written for like a movie in the 50s, right? So like that was like one of the small controversies, which doesn't seem that to be that big of a deal.
Interesting.
And it kind of cuts them like living and working at a dump, right? Probably collecting things that they can sell for, a little bit of change here and there.
Bottles and recyclables.
And this is where they meet Maman, and he offers them a Coke.
I love the character design of Maman because everything he does up to a certain point is so nice. He goes to these dumps, he finds these homeless children, he takes them in, he feeds them, he bathes them, he gives them a place to stay. There's nothing wrong with Maman. But somehow the actor that they got to play him, the clothes that he dresses himself in, the sunglasses, everything that this dude emits just there's something bad about this dude, and there's something really beautiful about that. Like to like make him do all these good things, but there's just like something real sketchy about this dude.
What's funny too is so apparently you can't really see the label on the bottle, and because that label didn't, I don't think it's actually a Coke. I think it's something else. And then they didn't want to be associated with the movie. And then Mercedes Benz wanted their logo taken off scenes where their Mercedes was in the slums because they didn't want to be. They thought it would like hurt their brand. It's
Yeah.
just like how fucking crazy is that? Is like Mercedes is like we don't want to be associated with poor people, so please don't show us anywhere near poor people if you could, please.
That's weird. That's so weird.
So they join up with Maman, and you're right. He's super nice. He's like, "Will you join me?" And they do. And then once you do, like you're stuck for life, right? Like he owns you if you like accept that Coke and go and live with him.
Yeah, you're like a slave, but and what's interesting too is about his whole operation is that he has these kids and then he trains them to be like the best beggars, and then he sends them out to beg, and then the money they just bring it back to him. It's kind of a genius. It's kind of a great business model, actually.
Well, low overhead, right? Like you're probably not
Yeah,
feeding him that well. Um, and so like Salim, because he can't sing, and he's like they basically say he's like a dog, like a rabid dog, like fighting people, like the big guy that pushes him or whatever. And then Latika laughs at him, and it's like this antagonistic relationship they seem to have as kids because she laughs at him, and then the next scene he like basically throws a baby at her and is like, "You carry that baby," and like if the baby cries, you get triple. Um, and then she does the thing where she puts chilies on his penis, uh, and like then like lets him
Chili
know that she
Willy.
chilies on the willy, like makes him know that she did it. Um, and this next scene is pretty like heart wrenching too. Like
Yeah,
like when you think about this movie in the way of like, oh, could does this type of stuff happen? It probably does. Maybe not in India, maybe somewhere, right? Of like,
yeah, it
oh,
definitely happens.
we're gonna blind these kids because they'll make more money begging. And he tells Salim like, go get Jamal, and he's like, hey, this is decision time. Like, are you with me, or are you like, and either way, it's gonna happen, but you have to decide if you're gonna help.
Did you understand that if they were good singers, they would be blinded, and if they were bad singers, I don't know what happens to them if they're bad singers. But none of the little kids are good singers. So for me, it's like, what's the difference between a good singer and a bad singer?
They're all bad. I think they're differing levels, and like Jamal was like one of the better. Like even though he wasn't good, he was like it was a cute singing, right? Whereas
But they were
Salim
gonna
sounds awful.
Right, I guess you're right. But they were gonna blind him, and I was like, why are they blinding a good singer? Because I was like, if you're a bad singer, you're not gonna get any money. But if you're a blind bad singer, then maybe people would just feel so sorry for you they would give you money. But no, then you find out it was only the good singers that got blinded. Because if you're good and you're blind, you get like triple the amount of money.
I think probably like if you were just bad enough singer, you did other things. Maybe they maimed you in another way.
Mm.
Um,
Well, there were kids without like arms and legs in that like troop, so maybe
right.
that's what they did.
So they decide to run, and Latika is trying to join them, and Salim just basically doesn't hold her hand and bring her up onto the train. And it's done in a way where
It's
Jamal
for the
doesn't
Chili Willy, bitch.
basically, and it's like Jamal's like sort of doesn't know if it was done on purpose, but kind of believes it was. And
Yeah.
he's like, dude, listen, she'll be fine. Like, there's other uses for her. She's going to be okay. And they ride the trains for a while. It's a lot of like them, like kind of, it kind of shows the trajectory of their lives of like sort of scheming and like selling things and stealing and like how they're going to do what it takes to get by.
I actually find this part really cool because it's like all of the scheming, lying, and begging that they learn from being with Maman, they're kind of like taking those skills and like living off of those skills. Of course, we get like the train ride with the famous MIA song.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they land at the Taj Mahal maybe 5 years later, and they both know English pretty perfectly.
Yeah.
Like they took classes on the train. I don't understand that part.
I maybe they just were so like around it. I like the transition too. It's like the little fat kid sees them stealing the naan and so that they get pushed off the train that way, and then as they roll down the hill, 5 years passes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the Taj Mahal part of it. It's pretty cool, like how it almost seems like an accident. They start like grifting. And I love, she's like, that's not what it says in the guidebook. He's like, that guidebook was written by lazy Indian beggars. I'm like, oh my. And then I heard she died in childbirth. Yes, the car was on the way to the hospital.
I asked Taylor if she could guess what the last question on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing would be. And she guessed it would be funny if it was the correct answer to what happened to the Taj Mahal guy's wife. I was like, that's a good one. That would have also been a good one.
Yeah. So then this leads to them doing more and more, like, they got a whole enterprise at the Taj Mahal of like taking shoes, selling them, stealing people's money, doing tours, taking photos. They constantly get chased off. So the last part, when they're in the like, I guess in the city where the Taj Mahal is, they're doing tours now, and they take them to like where they what are like dyeing the linens, and they start stealing parts off. Salim steals parts off the car as Jamal does the tour, and I like how he's like fast Schumacher style. It's funny how like it sort of leads you to believe that like probably television is how they learned a lot of like their English, right? Like watching like English programming, like the F1 racing and stuff like that. And so when they get back, I think it's funny how they get back to the car, and the taxi driver or whatever immediately knows that this kid is in on it. He has no proof of it, and so the English white family, or no, they're American, are like, dude, why are you hitting this? You don't know that he did this. He was with us. And it's like, they're right that there's no evidence, but this fucking guy knows, and he's right that this kid did this. And I love how he's like, you want to see a real bit of India? This is a real bit of India. And she's like, well, let's show you a real bit of America. And I think they give him $100 bill, right?
So they don't. They don't. It doesn't show them giving him $100 bill,
But it
and which
has to
is
be.
no, it's not. It doesn't. It's not, because what's crazy is that when he meets the blind singer that he knew back then in the tunnel, and then he gives him the $100 bill, the kid smells it. Oh shit, you're right. Because then how did he get it? Oh fuck, yeah, you're right. It has to be.
You got there. You got there.
I got there.
But I like how he asks him who's on the $100 bill. Prem does, right? And he's like, who's on the $100 bill? And he's like, yeah, have you seen many of those? He's like, a minimum tip for my services.
He's like,
And he's
a
like,
minimum tip for that. Oh, he's like,
the
that's why
child is being tipped $100. No wonder my phone service is so
Yeah.
high.
So great. So great.
Yeah. And then he's like, he asks him, then we're back to the police station. He's like, how did you know who's on the $100 bill? And he's like, Bombay has turned to Mumbai. And I was like, I don't think that answers the question, but it eventually does. But the Bombay turns to the Mumbai part, where they go back and you see the city changing in sort of montage way.
Well, he wasn't saying that. He wasn't saying that. First of all, he was saying that to the cop, right? Because he was still being interrogated for getting the answer right. And then he wasn't saying that as the answer. He was like
leading to a story. He's like, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he keeps looking, and then he eventually finds the boy who's blind, who he knows his name. Like, he was one of the guys that, I think he's probably the kid who got blinded right before him, I would guess.
He is, yeah.
And then he's like, she's more than alive. They call her Cherry. And then as Jamal walks away, he's like, I'll sing at your funeral. And it's basically, they go to the red light district. It's like that version of it.
What are they spraying in that tunnel?
Man, I don't know.
Because he
Nothing
runs
good.
right through it.
Nothing good, I would imagine.
Yeah. So he has to navigate. Him and Salim navigate the red light district, and I like how, like, Jamal is there to find Latika, but Salim is like,
he's also there to find her.
Where the bitches at, huh?
Yeah. Well, he says that earlier. Is I get so much pussy in Bombay. You know what I mean? Like, he's like. And which they all make fun of him because it's all bullshit, but he's just got this bravado about him of like, I'm a ladies' man, which is like when he eventually kicks Jamal out, is because he's not, but he like takes advantage of Latika.
and he's drunk, right? Because he goes to visit Maman's rival,
Javed.
Javed.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess he gets a job with him, and he comes back drunk because yeah,
Yeah. And so we learn that the blind boy tells him who's on the $100 bill. So they find Latika, they sort of break in. And you don't even know this at this point. Maman shows up, but Salim has a gun. I don't know where
hmm
he got it, but he decided he needed one. And like I said, we talked about this earlier, but Jamal freezing at the gunshot and Latika not. And this is where they ask him who invents the revolver, and
I
it's his
do.
brother tells him.
Oh yeah, he's like, you better step out of the way, Jamal, when you have a Colt 34 staring you down. And then, I mean, it could have been any one of those, but I guess Jamal was like, well, it's called a Colt, so I guess the answer's, whoever Colt
Yeah.
is, which I guess is just lucky, right? Because if he was like, he's like, instead of saying like you have a Colt staring you down, he's like, you have a revolver staring you down. Jamal might have just thought that the answer was the revolver, dude.
Yeah. So this scene's pretty interesting too in that they are in this abandoned hotel. They're in one of the rooms. Latika is taking a shower and she's like, I need a towel. And she's like, don't look, don't look. She's like, I know you're going to look. And she's like, where'd Salim go? Salim's left. Um, and when she walks out and she sees him staring the other way, she's like, you're a good boy or you're a sweet boy. And it's like, it's almost, she's like, you haven't been affected the way like other people have by like this life that we've led.
Yeah.
Um,
And then when she was going back in the bathroom, she like called him a simp, friend zoned him pretty hard.
can't wait for Salim to get back here. So we find out Salim went to Javed and he's like, I killed Maman and I'll kill you too. And Javed's like, I've been looking for someone like you. It's like, really, have you? Okay. Um, and then at this point, Jamal's like, it's our destiny to be together. And Salim's like, no, it's my turn. And this part's like really sad because one, like the obvious implication of what Salim's going to do, but two, also just like Latika basically stepping in and be like, "No, like this is gonna happen, so I'm gonna Jamal, you need to leave. I don't want anything to happen to you. Go away." Like almost like sort of giving into it. It's just like it's such a sad part of the movie.
Well, like you said, she's a realist, right? Like
Hmm.
she handles things more in a inevitable, logical way than Jamal follows his heart and like lets his emotions determine all of his actions, right? But Latika's like, let's just get this over with, sort of thing.
But I also don't think Salim was ever gonna. I mean, he was drunk, so maybe that's the reason he would have shot him. But it doesn't seem like he was ever gonna shoot his own brother. Like he loved, like all the bad things he did to his brother was really, in a lot of ways, to keep his brother close, so his brother didn't find someone else and sort of leave him, which is obviously poorly thought out. We now are back at the police station. I love the way the officer's like, I've never met someone who admits to murder to avoid a fraud charge. And he's like, well, when someone asks me a question, I tell them the answer. And then this is when we get to see Jamal at work, the chaiwala from Mumbai. And I love like them learning about England, and like he's like better at his job than all the people who are doing the phone bashers, which is also another like great term for that. Um, like he's better at knowing all the stuff about England than they are until he's actually put on the phone and he's like, I'm at Big Ben Luck. She's like, all right, put your supervisor on, and he has to hang up. Um, it does like I don't think the movie directly says this, but it feels like he works at that place selling cell phones so that he can eventually get the opportunity to search for Latika and Salim, using their computers.
Oh, I didn't get that from that at all.
Well, the first chance he gets, he does it.
I mean, yeah, that's true. That's true. But when he's serving tea, it feels like he's been there for a while because he knows like the trends, right? Like he's asked the questions and he's like, "Oh, I know what happens." So, I feel like he would have more opportunity beforehand to do this. I feel like they showed you him working here, so he knows how to get on the show. It answers that question.
Well, but he didn't start working there to get on the show, right?
No, 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 but it shows how he knows to get on the show because he works there.
I guess, but I think he could have worked anywhere. So the fact that he worked at some place, and the movie, it's kind of similar to he looks up Salim's Malik's name. It's going to be the third one, right? Like it's always the third option is like two wrong ones in the third one. But just like the first opportunity, we see the first opportunity he gets to like look up people's names, and so there's no Latika, but there is like a ton of Salim Maliks, and he calls his brother, and his brother like immediately remembers his name
The
or
dude must have the
remembers his
most
voice.
the dude has the most recognizable voice in all of India because his brother recognizes him right away. The blind kid from his 5 years ago childhood recognizes him right away.
Right.
That was a complete different actor too. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
what are you going to do? And he immediately is like, it kind of shows the guilt, right? Like this guilt has been racking him for maybe over 10 years at this point. What are they, like 10 to 13? And now they're probably like early 20s at this point. Like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, right?
They could be 18.
But he's been racked with the guilt of like doing this to his brother for this long that like as soon as he knows it's his brother, he's like, we had to leave. Maman's men were searching the hotel. Like it's almost the first thing he says to him of like explaining what he did. um and then when they meet, the fake out of him like rushing and throwing them both off the buildings to their death,
Yeah.
and then instead he punches him right in the face and he's like, I will never forgive you. And he's like, I know, you're never, like, I know I'll never get your forgiveness.
I think it was a blink and you miss it moment, and I missed it. But remind me how he finds Latika again, because he gives the card key to his brother. He's like, "Hey, meet me at my place. We'll stay there. Everything's chill." And he gives him the key to go to his place. He's and Javed is coming, right? He's like, "You better get out of here," or
No.
something.
No. What happens is he stays with his brother. His brother's like, you have to stay with me. He stays with his brother. His brother gets a call early in the morning and he just follows him to Javed's because he knows that's where he's going to go.
We don't see his brother at Javed's.
We see his brother drive to Javed's, so he follows him and then he waits for his brother to leave and then he goes in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I must have like gotten up and gotten water or something at that point, because the next thing I know, he sees Latika from like the balcony on the other side of the gate, and I mean, it would never work in a million years. But he tells the guy like, "Hey, I'm here for a delivery." He's like, "We're not expecting anything." He's like, "I'm your new cook." Like changes his story halfway through. He's like, "We're not expecting a new cook. We're expecting a dishwasher delivery." He
He's
goes,
like, I'm your dishwasher.
"I'm your dishwasher." And the guy's like, "Yeah, okay, checks out," and just lets him through.
Well, I imagine Latika like tells the guard let him in, right? Because she wants to see him, and like, but that's short lived to when he's like, I've been searching you for so long, like this is our destiny. And she like pushes him away. She's like, dude, get in the real world. Like this, I'm stuck here. Like I'm his property, basically. Um, we didn't talk about when he first sees his brother. He's like, "Where's Latika?" And his brother's like, "Still?" And then he's like, "She's gone, brother, long gone." Which is like,
Oh, not only that, but he was like, "We looked for you after I sexually assaulted her," by the way. But Maman's guys raided the hotel, and we had a run, but we left you a note at work. And he was like, "You did not leave me a note at work, you son of a bitch!" Like there was no note.
yeah, there was no message. There was no message. It Also, Maman has like two guys at that point, right? Like we saw the whole combat. There wasn't a ton of
I
people.
wanted to mention this earlier, but I love the so when he tries to get away from Aman the first time, when he's about to blind his brother, he throws the anesthetic or chloroform into one of the bigger bodyguard's eyes, right?
Right.
So then when we see him after all those years, he comes through the door and he has the scarring across
Yeah.
his face. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I would remember your voice for forever. So yeah, he goes to Javed's house, and Javed shows up after they've had this. He's like, dude, I want you to leave with me, and he tells her, I'm going to be at the train station, every day at 5 p.m. Javed asks for a sandwich. Javed's a complete dick. It doesn't seem to, at this point, doesn't like Latika. Just like, I own you, so you stay here. But like,
Latika has a bad taste in men.
she didn't choose any of these men. Oh my god. Um,
Just a bad sense of character all around.
yeah, Jamal just right there simping for her.
Yeah.
So, they make a sandwich. Sandwich looks pretty good, right? And then
No,
Javed
the
takes
sandwich looks horrible. They put like 3 different types of mustard and lettuce on it, and they're like, "That's a sandwich."
there's some meat. I think there's some meat, wasn't there?
No, it was like mayo, mustard, different mustard, lettuce
Maybe
between
he's
two.
he might be vegetarian, so I don't know.
Yeah,
And he tells him to get out, and she's like, "Dude, get out before he kills
us
both of
both.
us."
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and he says, "I'll be at the train station every day." And we don't know how many times he was at the train
It's
station before
it's
she
the
showed
first
up.
day. It's the first day.
We don't know that.
I think it heavily implies that it's the first day.
Maybe. So, and he looks very
That's why it's beautiful, David.
he looks very forlorn when she doesn't show up this day. Could have been day 1, day 500, who knows? And Salim
She
and the
shows
guys,
up day 1 and then say Salim and the guys take her away.
yeah, cuz they apparently followed her. They probably should have come up with a better plan, and they cut her face. One of the dudes completely just fucking jacks her face up.
Oh yeah, she's
Like,
hideous now.
which you got to feel like that dude probably was killed by Javed. He's like, I didn't fucking tell you to cut her face. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Who told
I
you
was
to do that? Were you improvising? What kind of fucking asshole like cuts her face?
Were you improvising with a knife? Yeah, man. I mean, she's hideous now. So
Yeah, I mean, no, she wasn't. Definitely not. The opposite of. So, we next get the point where he's on the show. He's just answered. Oh no, this is the bathroom scene where the guy's like, the only other person to become a millionaire overnight is me, and he's like, I don't know the answer. And he's like, I think it is written, and he wrote B on the mirror.
what's so great about this scene is that it lives rent free in my head constantly. I think about this scene at least once a month.
Go on.
There's just something really funny about him writing B in the steam, and then he goes and then just chooses the opposite answer. I don't know. There's something great about it.
And just he stares at him with such like, I know you're lying to me. And then when it's revealed, he's like, but not B, Ricky Ponting. He's like, D, final answer. And yeah, just stares him down as he knows, like, all right, you tried to just screw me over.
What's funny too is that Javed is listening to a cricket match while this is all happening in his house, while Jamal is there. And you see him kind of thinking back on if he fucking Sherlock Holmes here, noticing everything. But you see him kind of thinking back if he can like pick up anything during the small amount of cricket game that was being played. And nothing of like useful information really came up.
Right. And so then
so wait, I'm sorry, but he knew then? He knew that he was trying to fuck him over?
that's why I picked the wrong thing.
Yeah, I guess.
Because he just stares him down. And then afterwards, it's almost like no reaction of like, you lied to me. It's just sort of like, yeah, I know. And they then stop right before the last question to wait till the next day. And he takes him out the back way for the cops to just basically put a bag over his head. And the one guy's like, whoa, dude, what are you doing? He's like, oh, he cheated. He's like, how do you know he cheated? And he's like, I fed him the wrong answer. He's like, you fed him an answer? He's like, not exactly. And he's like, it's my fucking show. Like, I'll do what I want.
It's my fucking show.
And then we get to the scene that you talked about earlier where the cop believes him and he's like, I don't know where she's taking it. And then now this leads me to a question, right? He's like, I got on the show because I thought she would watch. And it's interspliced with a scene of him running to Javed's house and they're gone. And why wouldn't Javed just kill Jamal rather than moving hastily to get away from this kid? He's like running away like, oh my God, I can't have this guy find me, instead of just murdering him.
I don't know. Maybe they were always planning to move. Maybe it wasn't
Well,
really
they were.
like
She says that. She says we're getting out of Bombay, which also they didn't move that far out of Bombay because she was able to drive to the studio the next, at the next scene. So It's just his part's a little off. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's the first time I noticed it. I just thought it was funny.
The part
Um,
that I don't get is he tells the cops, he tells them the story about his brother sexually assaulting Latika when they were like 14 years old, right? And then they go, "Well, did you ever see them again?" And he goes, "I wouldn't be here if I have." But he did. He did see them again. But he lies to the cops about it?
no, I think he's like I would. I think it's just sort of not a mistrans. It's like a. They both know what they're getting at. He's like, did you see them again like that then? Right, like around that time.
Oh, okay, okay. But I mean, but still, he goes, "I wouldn't be here if I had." But he did see them, but he's still here. He's still like in the situation that he's in because he lost them again. Maybe that's where the mistranslation comes in. But um
Or maybe
I
he's
like
maybe he's saying, "Did you see them again after the train station?" That maybe that's what he
maybe
meant.
maybe
So now we go to Javed's house, and they're all watching, and Javed turns it out and just starts dancing with other girls.
up to this point, because we don't really know where the timeline is, right? As we're watching this, I mean, we do because we've seen it before, but you don't know where the timeline is. So it's like all the cop interrogation stuff is after all the other questions of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show, except it takes place before the last one.
Hmm.
And then all of the Latika stuff happens way in the past, except this last one where it happened kind of a few days ago.
Right.
So you're always like catching up to the moment until now we can say that there's no more flashbacks. Everything we see from now on is present time.
Exactly. And so Latika leaves the room to go watch it, and Salim comes in. He's like, he just never gives up, and he gives her the keys, and she's like, Javed's gonna kill you, and he's like, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that. And the way this just keeps cutting in between the show, Latika driving, Salim, dealing with Javed, all of that ending is so great.
Yeah.
Um, I assume you can't like once again this movie's going for a PG-13. So when he shoots Javed, you don't see a bullet really enter him, or at least I couldn't really tell when I watched it. And so I assume Javed's dead. That's the way I like to imagine that this ends is he's dead.
So Javed's dead, definitely. And then the guys come in, guns blazing, killing Salim. And Salim dies in a bathtub full of money.
I like that he basically is like, I'm gonna have you shoot up all this money and make it worthless. Like it's gonna get all my blood on it. There's gonna be bullet holes in it. Like all this money
I
will
took
now
it
be
that
used.
I took it that way too, although that's never really explicitly said in the movie.
Well, it looks cool in the beginning. That's for fuck sure. So
That's
um,
the important part. I also thought like trying to like I guess the only way to really forgive this character for all of his heinous acts is that he kind of has to die in the end. Salim, right?
he sacrifices himself so that his brother and Latika can be together. He also just like has a shitty life, right? He's a gopher for this evil dude. You know what I mean? Like
He's been a gopher for an evil dude for like the past 10 years of his life,
I
too.
don't know. I think he doesn't like it anymore because he also, like I said, he seems more religious, right? Like because he's wanting forgiveness. Like when his brother says, "I'll never forgive you," he's like, "I know," but it seems to be like the only thing he wants, right? Um,
I like to think at the end where there's the dance number, he still doesn't know that his brother is dead. And I think it's really sad too because he uses the call a friend lifeline
on his
to
brother,
call him to
yeah.
call him. But somehow fucking Salim knew that he was gonna do that, so that he gives the phone to Latika and he's like, "For God's sakes, don't lose this." And then she fucking leaves it in the car. So you have the moment where the phone is ringing and she's running back.
I love the ringtone too. I don't think he knew about the final wants to be a millionaire question. I think he's just like he knows this number, he'll eventually call it, or or maybe his number. I think he typed something in, so maybe he even typed his number in there, like here's my brother's number. But yeah, he's like, oh, he calls Jamal for the final question because he's like, it's the only number I know. But
He calls Salim.
Salim, right? And he's like, I love when he gets asked the question about the Three Musketeers and he smiles and the guy's like, "Oh, you're smiling, so you know it." And he's like, "Would you believe I don't?" And he's like, "So you're
Yeah.
gonna quit?" And he's like, "Why not? No, let's just risk it all,
Yeah.
double or nothing."
Double or nothing, baby. And I love when the producer's like, nah, no one's gonna pick up that line. He's like, do you have anyone else to call? He's like, that's the only number I know. And then in the last ring, Latika picks up and they have that moment. And then he's like, all right, you have to get on with the question. And so he's like, okay, the question. And she's like, I don't know. And the audience is like, and
I've
she
never known.
I've never known, yeah. And she's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know either. Oh, it's so great. And they're like, I don't care. Because the whole point of it was never about the money. And that's the beautiful thing about this movie, is that the whole point of it was never about the money. It was about getting her. And that phone call was him getting her. So he was just like, fuck it. Like, I did what I came out here to do.
And then he wins anyway. Now she definitely wants him because he's rich. But he goes to this train station. He's sitting there. Not a single person is bothering him. He's at this point in time the most famous person in this country, and not a single person is saying anything to him.
Yeah.
And then they meet, and he kisses her scar, and he says, "You know, it's written." And then I love the dance at the end.
I I knew it was coming, and I wanted to freak my wife out. So, um, the song is playing, right? But the credits are rolling, like the pre credits where it shows the main characters,
Yeah,
and I was like, "Yep, now it's time for the big Bollywood dance number." And she's like, haha, very funny. And then they start dancing, and she goes, oh shit. It's like, yep.
yeah, it's really good though.
It is really good.
I love the
Yeah.
song. So,
She was telling me that Taylor was telling me, she's like, I've never seen this movie, but I know Jai Ho. And I was like, and we were talking about like the awards that it won at the Academy Awards. And before I could even get to it, she was like, yeah, Jai Ho, best song. And I go, excuse me? She goes, yeah, Jai Ho won best song. I'm like, yeah. How the fuck do you know this and you've never seen this movie? And she goes, because the Pussycat Dolls did a rendition of it.
bet they did. Bet they did. And now the lead Pussycat Doll is just on The Masked Singer. So
Yep. Yeah, I heard about that too.
my wife's family apparently loves that show. Just
Yeah,
they were watching it on the day after Thanksgiving when we went over, and I was just like, why are we doing this? So I talked a little bit about the controversy about this. I just want to go over a little bit. Because there's no alternate casting for this. I don't know, like there was, but I don't
think
recognize
so.
any of the names. They
Sure,
wouldn't
sure.
resonate with me and you. But like part of the controversy was the fact that some of the younger versions of Latika and Jamal and Salim, like they were still living in the slums after this movie. But it was like it did kind of come out after that like the director and like producers put away money for them. They paid for their schooling, paid for people to take them to school, and that then put
So
in.
those kids were actually slumdogs.
Well, that's a very derogatory way to say it, but yeah. So no, they were, and so they did
because of the movie. Okay.
well. So the term slumdog, a lot of people found derogatory in India too, and the director was like, it wasn't intended to be that. It was intended to be that he was an underdog from the slum. And that's where it comes from, but. So I was just saying that, people were upset that these kids were still living in the slums, somewhat being harassed because of this famous movie. And so, and then they had family members that were trying to come back into certain kids' life because they thought there was a lot of money to be had. And then there were family members in their lives who were asking for more money immediately. But it did come out that like money was put aside for them in the future, and the director was like, I can't really tell you how much because it would make them targets, but it's substantial. And then like the kids were eventually moved out of the slums too. So
That's incredible, because like that kind of means, I mean, I don't know much about slum living, but that kind of means that they never had any formal acting training, and they did like fucking good.
I did notice that Frida Pinto, like she just didn't have a lot to do in this one. Like,
Yeah, I mean, she had the one scene at Javed's house, and then running back
she
from the train.
she just didn't say, like she didn't have a lot of lines. Like she had very like minimal, like, and obviously like This was sort of the Dev Patel show, like towards the end of it. But you know, the fact that you have these different ages and they are like the younger kids for most of it. But yeah, those
Yeah.
younger kids are awesome.
You're right. All the characters are much more their younger kids than they are their final form.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon. And thanks for joining us for another December where we get to watch movies that we've seen before, but we just really want to talk about. Next up is Children of Men. And this was Slumdog Millionaire.